house. Just delightful.
There is so much salt around the city hall, it's unbelievable.
That is actually PRC contractor. Before we were done plowing, and you know what happens. It goes on the side, the slush on the sidewalk, it froze. It's been a really difficult time.
I think this was one storm that it would have been better for us if they hadn't shoveled, because the places where they shoveled had run ice.
That has the ice, yes, absolutely. And so for us, the roads that the plow makes in front of your driveway, they're not used to that. Because it wasn't snow. I cannot tell you.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Nathan Kayla sent me, I don't know where he saw it, it was a truck, he sent me a video of a truck that has these things on the side that doesn't let the snow, yeah, it doesn't let the snow go into the driveway. And the photos of the side of the snow.
This is when I appreciate Zoom meetings. But I think in May they've reevaluated it, and I think the announcement in May of February too. So
Yeah, the original state legislation was May 25.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm sure we'll continue it. Because how else would he be able to come to a meeting? Remote meetings.
Yes.
He's in Florida, he's been there for,
Oh, then,
yeah.
I can always tell by the decor.
Yeah, and the fact that he has short sleeves on.
Yeah.
So is that what
I
you were
lost my
saying?
computer, or my email, so if you want me to share it.
No,
How will you compliment her?
I'm well confident.
Okay.
Did somebody make that sweater?
No,
You bought it?
I bought it at Marshall's.
It's nice.
It's like, yeah, it's like a Levi or something, or Lucky, I think it's Lucky Brand or something. I liked it.
Yeah, it's nice. I love
It
it.
looks like a lucky. Yeah, it was just like, I like these kind of knit sweaters, and you know, it's very warm. It's all warm. You need on it. Although I'm so glad that the wind is dying down. That
Oh, yeah,
wind
that was
freezing.
horrible.
You couldn't even go outside.
It was
You had to walk
terrible.
around.
That's the other thing that was why everything froze. It was so windy and
Yes.
so cold. It was on the
Yes. We'll try walking your dog for a mile.
I can't imagine. They were playing hockey at the, you know, the little park in West Newton at the corner, I think it's Elm and Webster.
Yeah.
The kids were on top of the snow ice playing hockey
Oh my
in the
God.
field.
I
It was
wonder
adorable.
if they shoveled off Bullow's again. They've been skating on course this winter.
Oh, I don't know if they covered it there.
Oh, wow, that's a bird.
That's,
Yeah,
yeah,
I know.
well, and it's dangerous, actually, because we do keep on having some warm weather.
But they
We
had,
haven't really, not in the last 2 years, so it hasn't dropped below.
I live in the state house.
But yeah, there's a lot of road salt goes in that pond. But the cove is good, right?
The cove's definitely, you could skate, it's not deep, that's deep. Cove's not that deep.
Yeah,
how deep is Bowling?
Like, in places, I think it's 6 or 7.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, they skated on the corner near Dexter and,
That might be where it's deepest.
oh God. Well, they had a hockey game there, about 3 weeks ago, they had a hockey game there.
Yeah.
maybe someone tested it.
Hopefully they tested it, that's not something we would, no.
Last week, there was somebody skating there, and he was skating closer and closer to where it comes from across the street.
Yeah.
Please don't go any closer.
No.
Well, and what if, this is crazy. If some kid goes under, he doesn't understand,
No,
live.
there was a woman from
Drafting my shirt.
She worked here.
Did she work? Yeah, she did.
She worked in HR.
Oh,
For years.
oh my gosh, I didn't know that she was still working, or I thought she retired and moved to New Hampshire.
She didn't retire, she moved and went to Lovell, I think, HR.
Yeah, that was
Yeah. It was a turn.
Magnite was like packed, it was a big wait.
Wow.
And she was a year ahead of me going out of school for Brahman.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
So I didn't know her, but I knew a lot of people.
Was she just walking on the ice? Was she
She
skating?
was walking on the ice and she just walked through.
Wow.
And they,
Someone could hear her, but they
Oh,
couldn't.
God, it's all right, stop.
They couldn't get to her.
followed us
Terrible.
and they lost her. It was
You
awful.
will,
Yeah.
hopefully you freeze quick before you.
I don't. You
Oh,
don't.
okay.
Okay, we're talking about wonderful things.
Yes, we're really sort of going into the call here.
Open my computer yet.
Oh, my goodness.
Okay, it is 7:00
Recording in progress.
and we can start the meeting. So, let's see, who do we have present at the beginning? Councilor Getz from Ward 5, Councilor Leary from Ward 1, Councilor Laredo from Ward 7, Councilor Kelly from Ward 3, Councilor Kalis from Ward 8, Councilor Danberg from Ward 6. Is that,
Councilor
Councilor
Gentile,
Gentile
yeah.
from Ward 4, and myself, Susan Albright from Ward 2. And this meeting is being audio and video recorded. And our first item is 2325, CPC recommendation to appropriate funds for the Jackson Homestead and Museum. Molly, are you doing it or Susan?
I will operate the PowerPoint and Susan will present.
Okay, is Susan the chair?
Susan is the chair.
So we're going to have Susan Lunan, the chair of the Community Preservation Committee, to present.
Okay, Molly, can you start to screen share, please?
Yes.
And I also wanted to thank you, Chairwoman, for putting us first on the agenda because I know that you have a long evening ahead of you, and that was very nice that we're going now. Thank you. The Jackson Homestead Basement Renovation Project, and today is February 19th, and in 2025. The scope of the basement renovation includes waterproofing the basement, climate control HVAC system upgrades, and improving the finishes of the basement. You'll see why improving the finishes becomes very important as the presentation continues. Currently, water is infiltrating the basement through the fieldstone foundation walls, causing instability to the structure. And Habib and Associate Architects have previously completed existing conditions. And I am cut off on my presentation because I have people. Okay, where am I going here? Molly, okay. Yeah.
The existing condition, conceptual design report, which was completed in an earlier phase, was funded with 75,000 in CPA historic resource funds. So this is the construction phase of this project.
Okay, next slide. The home project eligibility and community need. The Homestead site was originally acquired by Edward Jackson, who settled on the site in 1602, and the house was constructed as a federal-style farmhouse in 1809 for Major Timothy Jackson, Edward's great-great-grandson. It is a local landmark. I'm sure you've driven by it many times on Washington Street, and individually listed on the National Register building, making it eligible for historic resource CPA funding. The building was donated to the city of Newton 75 years ago and is operated as a local history museum. In addition to preserving the important structure, could you continue, Molly? I'm cut off at the bottom.
Completing this project will allow for the expansion of the museum's exhibition space into the basement. And it's a good way to better serve Newton residents and visitors who want to learn more about Newton.
Next slide. You can see that where we're getting our recommended funding is coming from the unrestricted prior year funds, $204,000, and we are bonding $1,471,000. The committee has discussed threshold for bonding. Ideally, our annual debt payment in each spending category should be no more than 20% of the annual target. And all bonded projects should be publicly owned. Many of our largest historic resource projects are privately owned. This one is.
Susan, can I jump in here for a second?
Okay.
I just want to clarify, I realized I should have added more details here. So each of our spending categories, affordable housing, open space, recreation, and historic resources, they all have a spending category or a spending target each year. So the idea here is that whatever we pay in debt in each category should be only 20% of that year's spending target. As of right now, there are no historic resource bonded projects. So right now, even though we have several other bonded projects, none of them are historic. But just to clarify, I'm starting from zero. Okay.
Funds needed after June 30th, 2025 can be added to next year's bond sale. And the project is set to bid in August of 2025 and will be completed in May 2026. A natural division of expenses would be to bond the expected bid amount of $1,471,000 with contingencies, and to pay out of unrestricted funds the architectural and engineering expenses and project management expenses up to the point of the bid, which is $204,000.
Thanks.
You can see our bonding options, which are explained on this page. We could go 5 years, 10 years, or 15 years. And we have each category and also on different percentages, 3.5 at the lowest and 5% at the highest. And you can see how those numbers all sort out. Do we have any questions about that?
I'll just add quickly, Susan. So there's a tool that tracks at what interest rates municipal bonds are being sold that day, what the current trends are. So I worked with Dan Brody, who's on our committee, and also talked to Marie Lemieux about what were realistic numbers to set as ranges for the highs and lows. And 5 is very conservative. That is the highest we should see. And they are the way they are now, when they sell the bond for the next fiscal year. 3.5 is still a fairly realistic number. So the first 2 columns represent a range of low and high of what our yearly obligation would be. And the second 2 columns represent a range low and high of what we would expect the total cost of the project to be as we pay interest and all the fees and premiums associated with bonding. The committee considered 5, 10, and 15 years, and decided the numbers for 10 years looked most appealing.
And suited our needs. We obviously have to consider this project in consideration of all the other projects that we do, and this was a good fit. Next slide, Molly. Thank you. Molly, did you have pictures?
Go. Okay.
So questions from the committee. I have one for you. Is the only work that's being done the waterproofing, or is there more work being done on that?
There's also HVAC system upgrades. Right now, and Lisa Davy is also on the call here and can answer more questions about it. But right now they're running 3 like Home Depot purchased dehumidifiers in the basement to keep everything dried out, and that is not an ideal system to for that.
So, if it's okay to add to it, so we found out in the study that, and Rafiq gets a lot of credit for this. Part of the reason why we're getting water through the foundation is it's being trapped behind the porches, which are very old. And we also have water issues because our gutter is old. You can see big holes in it and spaces behind the gutter between the building. And so this project also includes replacement of the gutter all the way around and replacement of the side porch and front porch, which aren't that safe anyway. So there's a couple of benefits that are coming out of this besides just controlling the water. And in the current heating system down there is fossil fuels, gas furnace. And so going to, I mean, at least what's planned right now is electric, something like a mini split kind of thing. So that helps with in keeping with the city's, sustainability goals too.
Okay, Council Gass.
Is there a master plan for this site that you know of, in terms of, there's quite a bit of land area on that lot?
Maybe Miss Sadie would know. Lisa, would you?
By master plan, is that a specific document generated from the city or?
No, I'm just asking about, the eventual evolution of the site. In terms of, there is quite a bit of land area on that site.
Yeah,
So I just didn't know if, the plus minuses of the whole development and the potential of like an additional wing, an addition.
yeah,
The archive, that sort of thinking,
yeah,
we're investing dollars on the site.
yes. So, there has been talk on and off of extensions off the back of the building and the pros and cons for that. One of the things that was studied actually in this initial study, and we have drawings for and some cost estimates for, is the notion of putting an elevator off the back. That's a really laudable goal for so many reasons. We're not accessible on all of the 3 floors that are public at this point. That's not contemplated in this particular project, but that's something that's been studied. So in terms of long-term planning, that was one thing that was looked at. I also, in our strategic plan, we do have notions of looking at creating a cultural landscape report. So it looks pretty barren around the building. That's a whole other kettle of fish from today and this year. But it's a good question because we are thinking long-term around a few other projects. Not necessarily CPC funded, just how we're treating the property over time.
Well, just in terms of like, you just got into the minutia of bonding, and I wondered where, the First Baptist Church in Newton, because it also too dipped into the historic pot.
Correct. It is privately owned though. And one of the criteria the committee has talked about for bonding a project is to bond publicly owned projects rather than sort of take out these loans on privately owned spaces that we don't have control over. Jackson Homestead is, I think as of right now, the only project one of 2 projects we have that's publicly owned and historic resource. And that's partly why we chose to bond it, even though it is a smaller amount than our other bonded projects. It's because we don't know how many opportunities we'll have to spread out some of our expenses in the historic resource category, and we're receiving a lot of them at the moment. We've received a lot of water at, First Baptist is one of them. Family access was a little smaller, we're anticipating more requests for the War Memorial Stairs and, just big projects for historic that are coming in right now, expensive projects, so. We want to be able to spread out our expenses as best we can, over the sites that we have control over.
Councilor Leary. Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Dady, I wanted to ask a little bit about the CPA that was the $75,000 that was spent, for waterproofing. That was like 3 or 4 years ago, was it? I remember that coming up in this committee, and I just wanted a reminder, a little bit of what that did. And then I was gonna ask you if you could give us a little more details about how you were improving that space down there, and I think you're moving HVAC systems and what that's gonna look like and what your goals are for that space.
Yeah, so the $75,000, Molly can elaborate on this, but that was paying for a study. We wanted to have an architect and we have a professional cost estimator come in, an HVAC expert, an engineer come in to give us a study, to have us understand what's needed and to put some prices to it, which is where the ask is coming from, a very detailed cost estimate. So the $75,000, thank you very much, paid for that process, that initial study. They drilled holes in the basement to be sure where the water was coming from, that sort of thing. And to your second question, so part of what's happening here is, if you think of Jackson Homestead, the main part of Jackson Homestead is a sandwich. We have roughly 1,000 square feet, 3 levels, the basement, first floor, and second floor. There's an attic, but that just has a little bit of storage in it. So fully a third of the building is not useful at this point. It's really because the HVAC is not working for human comfort, and it's definitely not working for the safety of the city's artifacts. There's not as much that we can do down there. So what we want that space to do is to be fully accessible to the public and have people come down there for exhibits, have a meeting room. We also have supply storage down there because we don't want to have it on the sort of high profile main floors. And so it just so happens that at some point in the basement, the furnace was put right smack dab in the middle of the basement. It's a huge sort of room that's in the way, and we wouldn't contemplate moving it if it weren't for the fact that we already have to disrupt this space to do the waterproofing and to reap the benefits of a new HVAC system. So since we're doing that anyway, all of a sudden we have a more open space that will be more useful to us. That's just one example that this project is a lot more than just putting a membrane next to the field stone to get water, to keep water out. It has a full-on benefit for the public once it's done.
Would this mean that the building will be fossil fuel free at this point?
Yes, that's right, because the HVAC system, Rafiq, right on the wing is electric, I think. I think that's true. I don't know if you remember, it's been about 10 years since we put.
But you have no gas or oil coming into the building?
No oil, so right now the furnace in the basement is gas.
Is that the furnace you're removing? Yes. Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah.
It sounds
Yeah.
like fossil fuel free. Okay, I'll let my colleagues ask questions. Thank you very much.
So we'll just confirm with Rafiq, since you can speak now. So the whole building will be electric?
Yes,
Okay. What's your answer?
we are replacing the whole HVAC system, and we are gonna have humidity control, everything for the arts, and so the archive is new portion, so we're not touching that.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Gentile.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I feel as though I'm experiencing deja vu. Haven't I heard about this project, or at least a couple of times before? I remember, I know I went to the Jackson Homestead and had a tour, but it was quite a while ago. And then I could have sworn that we had the very similar discussion not that long ago. So what am I missing?
Knowledge, that was the same.
I don't think, was that the $75,000 discussion, do you think?
What for the, was that for the, just the original study?
Yes, yes.
So, Molly, wasn't, when we came, we talked about the larger scope of the project and we had a very gross, maybe Josh or someone had a gross dollar sign put toward it. And it
Yeah,
was out of that discussion that we decided we really needed a study to better understand what the true costs are, and that's where the 75,000 came from. So it probably is deja vu because we talked about
all
the
right.
the package.
I was just curious because I'm very familiar with the plan, because I know we had a pretty in-depth discussion at least once, if not a couple times. All right, that's all I was curious about.
Council Kalis.
Just so you're, Counselor Gentile, I remember it as well. I think we talked a little bit about it, but it wasn't in detail, so this is the detail, I guess. That's it. No questions.
One thing I should have put in the presentation, and didn't, that I want to clarify is that Lisa and her team have received other grants and done a lot of work on, updating the exhibits and planning what is going to actually be downstairs in the basement. CPA funds cannot go towards the actual exhibits, that's not an eligible expense. So we're funding all the building side of this larger project that's going to involve funding from different sources.
So will the project cost be higher than what we're seeing here?
It depends on whether you think of them as many related projects or one project. But the cost for the building upgrades is the 1.67, with the 1.471 bonded. I don't know what the final cost ended up being for the exhibits because I'm not in charge of those, but it is part of the bigger vision that Lisa's team has been working towards.
So is there money, will there be money in your budget to do the whole project, the exhibit part?
So, yeah, one of the things that to think about is this is the year. We're in the year. It's the 75th anniversary of when Jackson Homestead was given to the city to be opened as a museum. So we have, leading up to this year, really tried to bring resources to bear and kind of do a rejuvenation of this space. So we have a campaign, a fundraising campaign of $545,000. We're pretty far along on that. 200,000 of that was an ARPA designation that the mayor gave us a few years ago. And we also have secured, and hopefully we can keep it, it's a federal grant from the Institute of Museum and Library Services that's helping us deal with our collections. We're overstuffed, we have collections off-site. And so the exhibit money will transform the first floor. We're working with collection storage. And we're doing a lot of planning. We're kind of gonna, by the time we're done 12 months from now, it's gonna be an entirely new place. And what's wonderful about the project that the CPC is encouraging funding for is that it will be visible from people outside. You don't have to come to the basement of Jackson Homestead. You will see the new porches. Thankfully, Josh was able to go and secure $60,000 to paint the building. Councilor Albright knows how bad the paint job was over here a few years ago and encouraged the city to sort of paint part of the building, but it's not yellow all the way around. And we have some shutters, and if you drive by, you'll see some of the shutters are in disrepair. So that $60,000 is going to go to the painting and help with the shutters. So there's a lot going on here and a lot of resources being poured into the site, of which the CPC is a part, a hugely significant part, but a part.
Okay. It would have been, from my perspective, it would have been nice to have the whole context as a package. It would have made the presentation more unified somehow.
No, because they're not eligible expenses for me, I
No,
tried to
I
clean it out,
get it, I
but
get
yeah.
it.
I can see why.
Council Getz.
No, the only question I have is who makes the decision about the 5 versus the 10-year bonding?
That was voted on at the January meeting amongst the CPC committee.
So the decision's already been made,
The decision's been made,
that it's 10 years.
that we chose 10 years as those options.
Council Kalis.
Oh, sorry. No.
Okay. So anybody have any other questions? Sounds like not. So do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
So Council Leary is moving approval. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right. We'll send you off to finance.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'll see you soon.
Thanks very much for bringing the project.
Okay, good night.
Good night. So, Juanita, you're back. Thank you, Molly. And while Juanita and Sean are coming to the table, I forgot to introduce Katie Holt, and Lisa Dean? No, well, Lisa spoke already, but Katie Holt is our board. So Juanita, come and sit down.
Okay.
Which one of you is presenting?
Juanita Traver will be presenting this evening.
Okay, welcome back.
Yes, Madam Chair.
And how old is your baby now?
4 months today.
Wow.
It's grown like a weed.
He's very beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, you're on.
Yeah, please. So tonight I am presenting an update on the FY26, FY30 City of Newton curbside collection contract. Next slide. So an overview of the procurement process for this contract. These services are 30B exempt, and so past practice has been to renegotiate with our existing hauler, which is Waste Management. That practice has been done for 30-40 years, ever since the city moved away from in-house service to contracting out the service. Our original provider was BFI. BFI got purchased by Waste Management. We've worked with the same hauler that entire duration. So we started the process early, 2 years in advance of the contract expiring. We sought a proposal from Waste Management in spring of 2023. We deemed that pricing at that time to not be advantageous and made the decision to move forward with an RFP, a request for proposals, which would create a competitive bidding process. There was an effort to have a collaborative RFP with Brookline that was issued in February of 2024. We received proposals at the end of April in 2024. There was analysis and discussion with Brookline over the summer and fall last year. Ultimately, a mutually beneficial joint municipal contract was not attractive to either party. And we continued analyzing proposals for the most advantageous contract to Newton. The most attractive proposal was from Waste Management, which we support. Ultimately, though, the RFP was successful on controlling costs and providing attractive services. Next slide. So a little bit about this joint RFP effort with Brookline. We saw a lot of potential for an increase to economy of scale for both communities. There was potential to cut our Newton's hauling costs by taking our trash to Brookline's transfer station. So right now we have 6 trucks that drive every single day throughout the city out to Millbury to dump our trash. And so if we were only sending those 6 trucks to Brookline, it, in theory, would have cost a lot less money to send those trucks a much shorter distance. We also saw operational efficiency potential with sharing a route manager, administrative support services that we receive from the hauler, which may have also reduced costs. During the analysis of the proposals, these benefits did not ultimately come to fruition, and actually more misalignments of this potential arrangement appeared that I would say at the outset were not obvious. Next slide. So what was included in the request for proposals? Our curbside trash collection, curbside recycling collection. We included trash disposal, although we do currently have a separate contract for that. We wanted to get pricing and understand the marketplace.
recycling processing, management of our cart fleet, bulky item pickup, white goods collection, yard waste collection, which we also do currently in-house. Again, we wanted to understand what the marketplace, what the market looked like. We included organics collection service, dumpster service for municipal buildings, including schools. There's actually also some residential properties that receive city dumpster service, and mattress recycling. So these 10 services were all in one comprehensive RFP. The model that we used has been used by other communities. It was kind of a à la carte or menu of options. We had set it up so that any proposer could put in, any contractor could put in a proposal for one or all of these services and anywhere in between. Next slide. So the services that will be included with the upcoming contract include our curbside trash and recycling collection and hauling to the end site, single stream recycling processing, bulky waste and white goods collection, cart fleet management, which includes procurement of new carts, and then doing cart repairs, deliveries, removals, and swaps. Dumpster collection services for municipal buildings and those select residential properties. And then roll-off service at the Resource Recovery Center for cardboard, rigid plastics, municipal trash, and construction and demolition. These are the same services that are in our existing contract. Next slide. There are some changes from our current contract. The public-facing changes that will occur are an annual residential education guide being mailed out. The way that we structure this in the RFP is that we would design the document and then send it to the hauler, whoever was going to be the trash hauler specifically. Send that final design to them, and then it's their job to do a citywide mailing, because it's a difficult process to do within our city government. So we basically are doing either in-house or outsourced design, getting to a final design, sending it to them by a certain date, and then they will handle the mailing out to all households. And then the other big change that residents will see is removing of 4 holiday delays. This may or may not sound like a big deal, but I can tell you it's gonna be a big deal. So we are removing a trash day delay for MLK Day, President's Day, Indigenous Peoples Day, and Veterans Day. The reason for this is that it causes a lot of disruption and logistical concerns whenever we have a delay, specifically in the winter months. So a couple of years ago, I think it was 2022, there was a snowstorm, like a big storm during the day, the same week as MLK Day. So when we're already operating on a delay, what happens for the workers of our contract is that they don't get, so they get a 3-day weekend when there's a holiday, especially on a Monday, but then they have to work that following Saturday. So they only get a 1-day weekend the next weekend. So that year, when there was a snowstorm during a delay week, we had to cancel a day of service because legally they can't work, like DOT requirements do not allow them to continue working like nonstop. There has to be a 1-day period where they don't drive. And so if they were already working Saturday, that would have meant bumping a day to Sunday because of the snowstorm. So anyways, it caused a lot of chaos. And ultimately, it's just a historic tradition that there's a delay on these days. Again, it doesn't do any kind of service to the workers. They still have to work on Saturday, so they're not getting a holiday.
We missed that pickup. That was Ward 1 Thursday.
Oh, yeah. You don't remember. So those 2 holidays especially, we're going to avoid those issues. I would say also in the fall time, you know, it's a really busy time for DPW, especially with yard waste. So not having to worry about delay days for those holidays as well is, I think, overall going to help things, but it will be a big culture shift, and we're going to make every effort to over communicate this message to residents, because of course the repercussion is that if people make an assumption that there is a delay and they don't set their carts out, they miss collection that week. We're not coming back to everyone's house. So we really need to, we will be on top of getting the word out, including sandwich board signs at major intersections, banners on fences, publicly owned fences, kind of, we're gonna do a postcard mailing. This will be in the educational guide, like just whatever we can, of course, in the mayor's newsletter.
App is great.
Certainly on the app, that will be a great selling point for the app, like,
Yeah.
oh, are you confused about the collection schedule? Get the app.
And the robocall.
Yes, we can certainly do a code red reverse 911 call that reaches anyone who signed up for that service. So again, those are the public facing changes. Kind of more on the back end, the recycling processing. I have fought really hard to get this changed because I do not feel that the way that we are currently charged for our recycling is fair. However, it is the industry standard, so it's a David and Goliath type situation. So what we included in the RFP was for our recycling processing. So really that's the, like what we get charged per ton of recycling that is generated and sent to the materials recovery facility. We will get charged based on the composition of what we are actually sending them. Currently, we do not get charged on what we are actually sending them. We get charged on what is aggregated at their facility from all their different customers and what leaves their facility, which again, we have no control over, which is where I do not feel that practice is fair. So that has been, I would say, hashed out. It was included in the proposal from Waste Management. Additionally, there is going to be the capability of recording collections tied with GPS to the address. What we hope to accomplish with this is a lot less chasing of missed pickups, quote, missed pickups. I would say there is a lot of evidence pointing to folks forgetting to set out their carts, and then they call and say, oh, you missed me. And right now, we don't argue, we just go back and get it. So with this technology, we will be able to say, actually, it looks from my end that you did not have your carts out on time. And we may do something like where there's, I don't know, an initial forgivable offense, and then we go back, but that's to be determined. What's going to be useful is just having the ability to do that. Next slide.
Eventually. One moment. Is this the slide? No.
That will be the next slide, yeah. I think is this
Oh,
still
I
being
think
shared?
sure.
Okay. So ultimately, even though we did not partner with Brookline, this RFP process was extremely successful, again, from a cost control perspective. So what I've included here and what you received in your packet is, this is just kind of the summary. So the April 2023 proposal pricing that we had asked for from Waste Management, the numbers are there. Our initial year increase would have been 18.4% over the current fiscal year that we're in right now. And then ultimately the pricing that we're ending up with after going through this entire process is an increase of less than 5%. So we now have all of the evidence we need to know that it was worth going through this competitive process to really not leave money on the table. Next slide. So what about organics? As I said before, this was included in our RFP. We did receive 2 proposals for curbside collection. Cost was ultimately the biggest barrier, but again, it was really good to understand what the cost, like an actual cost quote for our city to receive curbside service, what that looked like. Of the 2 proposals that were received, the prices were 1.5 million and 3.8 million. Sorry, there's like an animation. We have had discussions with Waste Management and they are interested in exploring a co-collection model and we will continue to discuss the feasibility of doing that. So co-collection is a system that is in practice in certain areas. I think the idea originated around the Minneapolis-St. Paul area, and it's still in practice today in some of those communities. And actually most recently, it's been adopted by at least one city in Connecticut, I believe Middletown, Connecticut. So what the practice looks like is that there is a specific type of plastic bag. Let's just say that it's a dark green bag. And so that's provided to residents or say sold at stores, depending on the model that our overall program looks like. These designated bags, we would ask residents to separate out their organic material, so compostable material, and put it into this plastic bag. Then they take that designated plastic bag and they put it into their trash cart. So you'd have your regular kitchen bags, mostly gonna be white kitchen bags, and then you would end up with these designated green bags. There is now the technology available to have all of that waste in these bags, dumped onto a tip floor, and then put onto a conveyor belt and have literally a robot take just those designated bags off and separate them out so that we could prevent another truck from being out on the road. That's the overall advantage of doing that. So I would say there's a lot of potential to this model. And again, from a cost perspective, it's very advantageous. But right now it's just a discussion. There's not kind of like a bigger plan to do this. Right now, our disposal will remain with Wheelabrator Millbury. That did not change through this RFP process. And Wheelabrator Millbury is not interested in putting in I don't even think they have the space, to be honest, to put in kind of the sorting technology for this co-collection model. And so unless we figure out some intermediary location to be able to sort out the material, we would not be able to do that. If we found some idea that would seem feasible, there would be potential to seek grant funding from Mass DEP to, put some amount of money into the infrastructure necessary for this. Certainly we'd work that out with the contractor, with Waste Management. Next slide. So lessons learned. Overall, pursuing competitive pricing is worth the effort. There was a ton of work put into this project. Next, we must start early for an RFP process. We started 15 months in advance, but it became very clear that to be, I would say, as accessible as possible to the widest range of proposals, we would need to get the RFP out at least 18 months in advance because it takes 18 to 24 months for a contractor to purchase new trucks. So that was one of the barriers for other proposals to be competitive to Waste Management because they needed to purchase vehicles. And even with the time frame, but also with that upfront cost, it was challenging. It is useful to map out in advance and understand the contractor infrastructure. So in advance of the RFP release. So this became very evident once we received the proposals, just how fundamental the infrastructure is to any type of pricing. So what I mean by infrastructure in this case, the waste to energy facilities, where those are, landfills, material recovery facilities, where their fleet yards are, so where the trucks go get parked every single night. How many trucks they have available, if that information was available. But even mapping out the fleet yards themselves, that you could figure out how much mileage is between each contractor in the area, you know, in the immediate region, and what that distance is to the city, because that will factor into the pricing. And trying to collaborate with other municipalities will make the process much longer, especially if the government structure differs, such as a town and a city with our experience with Brookline. But it's likely still worth considering. As I said, in this case, it did not end up working out, but it was close to working out. It looked promising for a little bit. But it was very challenging because we, on both ends, didn't always know exactly what the next step was going to be, especially because they had a different approval process than we have. And that wraps it up.
Okay, questions from folks? Well, I'll ask a question then.
I have a question.
If we're still on the first one, okay. Well, so you guys want to before me then? No, go ahead. So I'm just curious about the organics part. Do we pay by the ton for waste
With trash?
with trash?
Yes.
So do we know how much tonnage was removed from the system because of the current organic system?
With our drop-off program?
Yeah, well, the drop off
And Black Earth?
Yeah,
We have estimates. We don't have an exact figure. And I would say we always rely on Mass DEP data. So every 3 years, Mass DEP does a waste characterization study at all of the waste to energy facilities in the state. That waste characterization isn't specific to Newton, but I would say, you know, overall, the residential trash stream is not going to be that different in different communities. So it's estimated about 30% of the residential trash stream is compostable material, like between food waste and compostable paper.
so we must be saving money because of the 3,000 odd people that are using Black Earth.
I believe that we are saving money. It's just very hard to pinpoint how much money.
Okay, do they, is there a cost? I don't, is it weighed each month or is it, how often is the trash weighed? Is it
So our trash is weighed every single day.
every single time? Okay.
Yes, so every truck that goes to Millbury is weighed, and we receive scale tickets from every single truck. With Black Earth, they do an estimate of how much each cart weighs. They don't get an actual weight of every cart and they don't weigh their trucks. So we don't have those exact numbers.
Okay,
But I think what you might be getting at is if the amount of organics that we could pull out of the trash would offset the cost.
yes,
Unfortunately, it's a very small portion of the cost overall. So like I would say the disposal and or tip fee for composting is a very small percentage of the overall cost compared to sending a truck out to every single house.
okay,
That's the bulk of the actual
Okay.
cost.
interesting. Okay, thank you for that.
No problem.
Okay, Council Leary, you wanna go next?
Sure, I'll go ahead. So thank you very much, Juanita, for that great presentation. First, I want to say a couple of things that are really positive, that I really love. And the fact that you did a bidding process. I mean, we've been with Waste Management for, I don't know, I know at least 25 years under the current one before and we've never done a bidding process. So this was, and as you said, was great information for you as well. So I hope it's not another 25 years before we do another bidding process. And then I also love, even though it didn't work out, I thought the experiment to work with Brookline was a great one, and that's the kind of thinking I think we need to really figure out, because our costs will only continue
I
to go up.
completely agree.
So thank you for that. And I want to say the yard waste pickup is going great.
Wonderful feedback.
Yeah, I mean, they kind of throw the stuff around a little bit, but. But I mean, they rarely miss a pickup, and they get it all done. And
Very glad to hear that.
there's a lot of yard waste. Cause I remember what we went through with the last year that Waste Management was doing it. I saw our Deep It Up guys out there at like 8 o'clock at
Yes,
night.
you did,
Correct.
and you will still see that occasionally.
Yeah, oh, well,
In the peak of fall, then
In the
we
peak
still
of
send
fall,
out
yes.
big pieces of equipment and, you know, just kind of whatever it takes to get it done.
yeah. This is a little bit off topic, but I think it's really important for people to keep some of their own yard waste in their yard. Yeah, you know, to use it as bedding around, and that's how you get to protect the beneficial insects and things like that. So I never liked the totally clean yard look, and you could tell that I don't. So I wanted to ask a little, if you had any more detail about that recycling processing charge. I'm a little concerned about that. Also, could you maybe talk a little bit more how it's different from when we had to, you remember we had contamination in our recycling?
Yes,
And we were getting charged for that.
yes.
So I want to better understand how it's different from the versus contamination, because it sounds like you're talking about different things.
It is different things.
Okay.
I will say that this gets pretty murky pretty quickly. I have made a commitment to the Sustainable Materials Management Commission to, whenever they include that on the agenda in the future, to go into that in granular detail, with a presentation specific to this. I will say, going back to what you were talking about with the contamination charges. So in our last contract, so our 2020 contract, no, wait, that's our current contract. The previous contract, our 2015 contract. That was, 2018 was when China National Sword hit, and that really caused this global disruption to recycling markets that we all are very familiar with. So in that contract, our 2015 contract, contamination was included in 2 sentences. It said something along the lines of, the municipality shall keep contamination of recyclables below 10%. If contamination exceeds 10%, there will be a surcharge. That was the only language in that. That did not protect us when 2018 came. And so that's why we ended up with those contamination charges. In our 2020 contract, those 2 sentences ballooned into 8 pages of details on how contamination would be measured, how it would be communicated. It gave us the right to bear witness to any auditing of our material. They had to give us 60 days notice for an audit, just like, I mean, you name it, it's in there now. So something that I fought for at that time in our current contract, but it was not deemed kind of like the hill worth dying on, essentially, was for us to be charged based on the composition of our material. So the composition is the makeup of what percentage is cardboard, what percentage is aluminum cans, what percentage is plastic containers, etc. So that fluctuates every month. I mean, it fluctuates all the time, but it fluctuates at their facility every month. And so they, again, just charge us based on what leaves their facility. I believe that the quality of our recycling is higher than what leaves their facility. And so it's a disservice to us, which I think is also evidenced by the fact that they fight us tooth and nail to keep charging us the way that they're charging us. And I'm like, something tells me that that's to your advantage. So, we have figured out a pricing mechanism, and I would say Waste Management was very reluctant in offering this to us, but we kind of went into the conversation, into discussions and analysis and negotiation, really wanting this as a sticking point. And so what's going to happen is that our material will get audited every 6 months And that composition will be what we are charged for the next 6 months, based on,
It's just us audited separately.
correct, our material, yes,
Okay, so twice a year they'll do that, and that's how they'll figure out how they will charge us.
what our composition is, yes.
Okay. And just one other thing, you talked about for the composting, that one bid was 1.5 million and one was 3.8 million?
Correct.
And was that the difference between composting versus anaerobic digestion, or was there more to it than that?
I don't think that was a factor, I think it just had to do with trucks.
That's a big difference.
Yeah, so in our proposal. Or in the proposals that we received, I would really have to go back and look actually at kind of what the split was between the tipping fee and the transportation fee. I actually think that was just transportation. I don't even think it was where, like, what the end site would be.
Just as an aside, if we ever do move into, which I hope eventually will expand our composting dramatically, because I think it will save us money. That we look at composting versus anaerobic digestion, because the importance of having that organic material going back into the soils is really important. And I think there's carbon benefits too, but I'd like to look into it more before we decide on those two items. And I'm very interested in co-collection as well. I think that's another way to save money, and maybe it's one point we can have. I know that because we have Millbury, we have to go to Millbury and then we have to go to Avon. It's not like
Right.
the trucks are going to the same place.
Right.
So that's the barrier there, but
Yeah.
if we do end up doing composting, I hope we can do that with co-collection.
Yeah,
And I'd like to incentivize smaller carts too for people, not,
oh, for trash.
yeah, for trash.
That is definitely something that I would say has been looked at a little bit, and then there is this other project happening right now. It's a consulting project. It's for a long-term plan for sustainable materials management for the city, and that is, I would say, part of what is being looked at is kind of what did they call it? They called it a revenue analysis of our program and kind of understanding what it would look like to change the model that we have.
Okay, great. Well, I'm done talking trash, I guess. I'll let my colleagues. Counselor Guest, did you have something?
Yeah, I do. I actually am very excited about this field, just because I think that there's such energy in the community about it. And I see it all the time when I'm at Rumford. You know, people are zealots about putting all of their pieces into each of the, whatever. And it's like, heyday in there. I mean, it's really crowded a lot of the weekend, it's impressive. So I'm just even wondering in terms of like trying to understand the stream and trying to understand, like, if we centralize in each village a collection place, and have volunteers do the sort, so that then there could be a pickup in, rather than each home, a centralized village designated pickup.
Like a drop off.
Yeah, so that then people would take that energy, go to whatever it is, locally. And then not just to go to Rumford, but then it would then make it easier for someone else to come in and do the next phase or the pickup. So I don't know if that's something that's been looked at, in terms of a citywide model, but I think that has a lot of potential. With us being 13 villages, right?
Yeah, I would say it's been discussed by the Sustainable Materials Management Commission. I think, so that's really a European model. So it's that is how most European cities handle their recycling in particular, is that things are source separated. So that means, you take your bin or your, let's just call it a bag of recycling. You walk to a drop-off collection point that's within a couple blocks of your residence. And then you're actually putting your cans in one spot, your cardboard in another spot, your bottles in a different spot. And that's how they end up with a really clean stream. I would say it hasn't gotten to a stage where the feasibility of that works. Just thinking about, like, especially land footprint of where that would go and kind of what space would be given up for that. I also don't know how much of an appetite there is to kind of take away the convenience of curbside collection and move to a drop-off model. But I agree with you that ultimately it has better results.
Right. I'm also thinking about like, you know, having someone who's a residence that has 10 little bins lined up on their, you know, corner, and it becomes like, you know, really problematic, you know, in the sense of just asking one truck to go pick up number 9 versus, you know, number 1. And it seems like where's the most cost in the system, and how you could then eliminate that or bring it down and put that revenue into another piece of it, so it makes it more viable. So that's just what I'm thinking of. And then, is it not possible to get a smaller bid now? Can you not get like a?
For trash?
Yeah.
Yeah, there is a smaller cart available. It's half the size of the standard cart.
Right.
So the standard cart is 64 gallons. The smaller cart is 35 gallons.
Okay.
I don't have an exact number. I estimate about 500 residents that have adopted that.
Okay.
But there's not, I would say, a true incentive to do so. So I don't think that that's why it's been widely adopted.
Okay.
But for certain folks that they're just like, oh, this is too big, I definitely want something
Right.
smaller, yeah.
Right, well, I also, what you were suggesting, and I think it's a good idea to put a smaller container out, you know, just so that then you are driven to generate less trash, but also, you know, think about
Right.
the other options. But it's also a signal, you know, not so much trash. right?
Absolutely.
Okay, yeah, that's it for me.
Before I call on Council Gentle, I just want to say that a lot of the towns on the Cape have recycling drop off. It takes up a lot of space. And I just can't imagine where we would put something that big.
No, I'm just thinking of places that are communally, you know, like the libraries, we have a lot of the community libraries, you know, in terms of potential place.
Yeah.
But it becomes also an issue with. Yeah, I can see it being problematic if it's not, you know.
Come
whose
visit
responsibility.
me in the summer and I'll show you the dentist one. It's huge. It's,
I go to the
Yeah.
Mashpee one, it's pretty big.
yeah.
Yeah.
Council Gentile.
Thank you. Juanita, if I missed this in your presentation, I apologize, but after the joint RFP with Brookline, I think you said then you went out, you know, with an RFP just from Newton.
That's
How
not,
many-
no. It was just one process. And in the RFP, it was stated that while the municipalities wanted to work together, it may be possible, or it may end up happening that the municipalities would end up with separate contracts. So it was just one RFP.
Okay, so did you get any other bidders than Waste Management for, you know, for our contract?
We did, we received 2 other proposals for curbside collection service.
And which companies were those?
That was Casella and Capital.
Okay, and I'm curious as to how much higher, were they close to Waste Management? Was it like not even close? I'm curious as to how those 2 bids came in.
I would describe it as not even close.
Not even close. Okay, all right, that's all I wanted to know. Thanks.
Council Danberg.
Thank you very much. Juanita, again, thank you for a great presentation, packed with very good information. I applaud your work on composting, because I think that if we're looking at that being 30% of Newton, weight by weight, we should be able to have some wiggle room in being able to do it and also pay for it if it's more expensive to separate it out. I would hope that you would continue to work on it, and one of these years come back to us and say that that we've managed to find an economical way to do it. A couple of little questions here. You mentioned weight. Were we over or under in our estimate of weight? Do you know whether we were under or over
Do you mean for trash?
for trash? Yes.
So over or under from what benchmark?
The estimate,
Like our annual,
Budget estimate.
like our budget
Yeah,
estimate?
but the budget estimate, yes.
Okay. I would say we were under last year of our budget estimate. I would say we try to be as conservative as possible, but we don't want to end up with a scenario where we generate more trash than we have the budget for. So we always try to base it off of the previous year, but give a 300 to 500 ton buffer in the budget.
Okay, and total tonnage, if we give a buffer of 300 to 500, what's the total tonnage?
The total tonnage is 16,000 and change. I want to say maybe 16,600 for last year. I don't have that figure with me. So in the past, we had budgeted for, say, 17,000 tons.
Okay, and the bags that we would use to put compostables in, are they sort of similar compostable bags to the ones that Black Earth now gives us? Of course, we know that there's no such thing really as a compostable plastic, but some break down more than faster than others. Or would we use that same kind of bag?
I think that's to be determined. Some of the other systems that are in practice do use compostable bags. The bag itself has to be pretty thick for this process because, you have a compacting truck and it's, again, there's like this commingling of bags of trash and bags of organics. So it needs to be thicker, and so that would just add cost. We all know that compostable bags are more expensive than traditional fossil fuel-based bags. So that would just be a factor in determining what the system would look like.
Okay, and my last question, if we do composting, Black Earth now takes everything that's organic, bones, meat products, cheese, etc. Would that be the case? And would we strive for that, or would we need to do that? How would that work?
But right now, we don't have a real design for what this would look like. We don't know what the end site would be. And so that's part of kind of the ongoing discussion of making this feasible. So if the end site were to be Black Earth Compost, or a similar commercial composting facility, we would just go with whatever material they accept, but we just don't know. We don't have that end site right now established.
Okay, good. Thank you very much.
Councilor Laredo, President Laredo.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Chair and Ms. Traber, superb presentation. Thank you so much. Just one question really following up on the curbside recycling. Remind me approximately how many households use Black Earth in the city?
I believe the count as of yesterday was 3,145.
I just asked for an approximate number and you give me a precise one. Far too much detail for my mind, let's put it that way. So we're a bit over $3,000, 3,000 households, and what, 100, it's like $12 a month or something like that?
Roughly, yes.
So the math on that, are we better off getting the service through the city and having homeowners pay the city for the service?
That has not been investigated.
I mean, forgive me if I'm doing my math, but you're talking $150 per household, 3,000 households. What does that get us to?
Not very much.
Very much, yeah, I'll do my math.
You're counting on us to do the
I
math.
was a history major. Don't count on me for this stuff. But yeah, Counselor Kalis, you went to business school. Tell us.
It's not very much.
What do you want to know? The total?
Yeah.
45,
Yeah, it's like,
450,000, no, 45,000?
No,
Sounds
no,
right.
it'd be more than that.
okay, we're talking,
Yeah, I think that's what it is.
So just under 500,000, is that where we're getting?
432,000.
So I'm just wondering, I'm just thinking out loud, if we were able to get that number up significantly, are we better off I mean, this price of 1.5 million would be for the entire city, right?
Yes.
I'm not looking to charge trash fees, don't get me wrong. I know others feel differently about it, but I am just wondering that economically, in some ways, I would be better off if I'm using Black Earth compost, if I was paying the city my percentage of this rather than individually. And I don't know how that would work out, and there's a lot of logistics there, but I just wonder if that's worth looking at in the future.
It could certainly be worth looking into to rework the existing fiscal model. Something that would be a big consideration in the pricing. Right now, with our preferred vendor program, it is not subject to prevailing wage. And so if we were to contract directly with Black Earth and the city is paying Black Earth and residents are paying the city, then the price of that service is likely to go up because it would be,
Look, I'm not asking you to do it now. I think it's something when we do this again, and you're going to be planning for this actually in the not too distant future, giving your lead time. I think we all agree that composting makes a lot of sense for a whole host of reasons. And so if we can figure out a way to make it more economic and in turn get more people to do it, that'd be a win. So I'll just leave it at that, just a thought. And again, thank you for a great presentation.
Thank you.
Councilor Leary. I just wanted to follow up with President Laredo's comment, made me think about, I know that we have drop-off locations for composting now, and I just would like to get the latest update, as I've heard really great things about people that participate in it. So how is that going, and how do you know how much compost is going in to the drop-offs?
So it's been going very smoothly from the city's end of things. So Black Earth services those bins. So
Can you tell me where they are too?
Yes, so we have 2 carts that have been at our Resource Recovery Center on Rumford Ave since 2020. So those have been the longest standing, and then last February, so a year ago, we put in place 1 drop-off bin that's right here at City Hall in the War Memorial Circle. There's one on the north side of town on Albemarle Road, right next to the baseball diamond, or kind of in front of the baseball diamond. And then there's one on the south side of town, right across the street from Oak Hill Middle School. There's 2 Helpsy clothing or textile drop-off boxes, and we placed our food waste drop-off box right next to that. This program has been very successful in terms of, we have not, I can name on one hand the number of complaints that we've received about it, from both users or non-users. It's very cost effective. We pay per pickup, and each of those bins is receiving 2 pickups per week right now. We don't have, again, like good data on how much is being collected at each bin. We do have, the way that we set up the program, we have, we did a registration, and really that was for us to kind of get some understanding of who was using this. And each of the bins is locked with a combination lock, and that was really to prevent it from being used as a trash can. But anybody who wants to and goes through the work can get the combination in 3 minutes. by just answering these, questions on this little, we called it a registration page. But once you have the combination, you don't need to do anything ever again, other than enter the combo in on the lock. And that has been, I haven't heard, again, more than 2 complaints that has been too arduous or anything like that. I think it's been highly successful.
That's amazing. I mean, no smell issues or people who forgot their combination and left it on the ground or.
No.
My dog loves both. They've been here at City Hall.
Oh, I'm sure.
Loves-
I believe it's been,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I see people all the time.
it is.
Yeah, that's-
And
That's
we have about 600 residents that have gone through that registration process.
Okay, that's amazing. I do use Black Earth compost and I just never really appealed to me to bring my stinky bag of compost to drive over to Rockford Avenue. Plus the bag disintegrates, like especially if it's hot, it just starts to disintegrate.
Absolutely, yeah.
Pretty quickly, so. Okay, that's great. I heard really good things about it, but thank you for the detail.
So, this was just a discussion item. And do you come back to us again, or does it go straight to finance?
Go to finance for the 5-year contract.
Okay,
approval.
all right.
Well,
Well,
if we
thank
could
you.
approve it, I certainly would.
Thank you. Thank you for coming and explaining it all to us.
Thank you.
Yeah, good work. So, if we could move no action necessary on this, if you're not coming back again, you're bringing the contract to
We will
finance.
give you an update anyways while we do our budget presentation.
All right, that sounds good. So,
I'll make a motion, no action necessary on this item.
okay, so, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, go back to the normal base.
Have you seen the news?
I saw a photo.
I saw it first.
Oh, you did?
Okay, the next The next 2 items were held and brought
Hold
back
on,
again tonight. 324-24, discussion of public works on stormwater mitigation from flooding.
Thank you.
And 347-24, requesting a discussion and possible ordinance amendment regarding how water movement between properties is assessed, monitored, and tracked. And we ran out of time, so for questions, do you have any more you want to talk to us about, or you just want to ask questions?
I did want to let you know I will meet with the neighbors in Anawan and
Okay.
Edgefield.
Okay. And you've got a,
We do have a plan. It's probably gonna be a private solution, not a city solution, because it is a groundwater issue. Even if we put in 100 drains, it's not gonna alleviate the groundwater for them due to the elevations.
Yeah, the one is.
Yes, go ahead.
As I understood, that it was the elevation of the pipe that was the problem, in terms of.
Our sewer is under it though,
Right.
so we can't,
Right. So.
and we have to have the gravity flow in order to get the stormwater
Okay,
off.
so maybe I can talk with you offline in terms of what the solution was.
We're investigating, it is not
Oh,
solved, we are
okay.
investigating.
Okay,
if you want.
all right, because it's a big
Mhm.
issue down there.
Counselor Kalis.
Yeah, so the way that I worded the second item, it was very specific because it's really about the ordinance that we currently have on the books, which talks about water being maintained on specific properties and not being allowed to flow onto other properties. The problem that we're having is that there's no evaluation, there's no way of telling through either engineering or inspectional services that the water's being maintained. And so when there's runoff, or if there's underground water that is flooding nearby houses, and it's obvious that there was just a development, but there's nothing you can do because that was built within code, but yet the water still is coming, there's no recourse for the residents. And so what I wanted to do was really talk with engineering, inspectional services, maybe even conservation, but how do we make sure that we're actually enforcing that that ordinance that we have on the books where water stays on one property? How are we measuring that? And how do we make sure that that's happening? And what is the recourse when there's a development and the neighboring properties are flooded because the water's moving? So that's really what I want to try to get to. And yeah, I'll go ahead, Commissioner.
I just wanted to let you know that there is enforcement language within that ordinance that does carry fines. And
Right.
all of the stormwater systems before they're even put in the ground are analyzed to ensure that they meet the ordinance standards and requirements. They are inspected once they are installed to ensure that they're installed properly. They are required to file an operations and maintenance plan with the city and with the registry of deeds. And we do send reminders out to every single property that falls within the stormwater ordinance. I believe it's from June of 22 onward.
Yeah.
That ordinance has been in place.
Right. And that's why it sounds like we have what we need, but in practice, that's not what's happening. You know, there's time and time again, I'm hearing from residents in Oak Hill Park about the fact that, yeah, the builders are putting in these storm drainage systems. They're supposed to keep the water on that property, but it doesn't matter because their neighboring houses are getting flooded, and then there's no recourse.
Can I ask one question? Are they completed projects?
Yes.
That's really important, that I know that we've received complaints on incomplete projects where the system wasn't fully installed.
So is there a process to, just to follow up a bit? So there's a completed project, the water's going to a butter. What are they supposed to do if the butter is getting water?
They should contact the engineering. They will go out and inspect and make sure that everything is installed properly and that they've met the ordinance requirements.
And they do that. And that's actually what happened in this one case. They went out, they checked, everything was set up correctly, but there's underground water that's moving. And it's because of the way these houses are being built, and we're not capturing it. And so it's destroying the houses around these houses.
So there are two different types of water here. We're talking stormwater retention and the groundwater table, which are very different. So they are required to address the stormwater retention. The groundwater table is a whole different type of problem.
Do we have,
Okay.
do we have?
So, yeah.
I believe I talked to you about when we do the I&I, especially in the Oak Hill area, because the groundwater table there is so high.
Yep.
We are investigating ways that we can mitigate some of that when we do our I&I project.
But do we need another ordinance on top of the existing one that is for more stormwater that is underground water? Because it's really untenable to be building houses and destroying the houses around it. It's just not, we can't allow that.
I understand completely. This is a bigger conversation that we probably do need law and ISD for. We don't regulate the building or the design or whether it's appropriate to put a basement in if there's groundwater.
Okay. So I'm glad that you're acknowledging we need to have a bigger conversation, because I think that's really important. I don't know if I'd hope that it's within public facilities, because I think it's that important. And and I think the public needs to be involved, because there's so many of the public that this is affecting. I only have one person here because this was done very quickly. But Ben, if you want to speak, you just raise your hand, because you're you've gone through this, but, I do think that, and I'd love to hear from colleagues on if you're hearing about this and what you think as well.
So is the issue that Counselor Kalis is bringing up, is it similar to the Anawan Road problem? It's all about
It
groundwater?
could be, so it could be about the groundwater. I don't know, it's gonna be property based. So we would need to investigate the drainage systems. So whenever we get a complaint about flooding on a property, we do go out and verify that it's not a city issue. That it's not a blocked catch basin, that there's not a cracked drain pipe or anything else. And that if it's a new development that they believe is causing the flooding, that they have installed their stormwater system up to the requirements of the stormwater ordinance. Beyond that, we may suggest a remedy. We cannot tell anyone that they have to do something in terms of sump pumps or anything else on private property.
Okay.
That doesn't fall within public works.
Counselor Kalis, we tried to get law to come, but they found out about it too late.
Yeah.
Come tonight, so if you really want ISD and law to be at this discussion, we can hold it again.
I mean, at a minimum, I'd want to hold it, but I do want to hear from other counselors as to what they're hearing or what they think about this.
So I think Counselor Gentile, I think you're next.
So, in response to Council Kalis, my experience has been, I can't remember getting a complaint on a project where there was, an elaborate on-site, drainage system that was required, for some kind of a, multi-unit project. What I've been getting, what I have heard about on a few instances Sean, I think you probably remember the most recent one I called on. I think it was Marion Street there in West Newton. There was a elderly, a nice, wonderful elderly woman that I heard from, and her daughter was trying to help her. And what happened was there was a house that was built right behind her. And she all of a sudden started having water problems that she had never experienced before, where her backyard was flooding pretty significantly. And I've heard about that in other instances, but I think what I'm hearing is we don't really have anything on the books to deal with these individual situations where clearly it just isn't a coincidence, that all of a sudden the water problems developed because of some work that was done at an abutting property. I don't even know what the final outcome. I know that, I called and Shauna and Jim had somebody go out there and talk to the owner that was affected. I'm not sure what, if anything, came of it. But if we don't have a way of dealing with clear instances of one neighbor impacting another, I think we need to, try and have a discussion and figure out a way of dealing with it. I have a brand new house going in across the street from a house I own just around the corner from this woman on Adams Ave. And Adams Ave has historically had one water flooding problem and sewage problem after another. And I'm curious to see, what ends up happening with that project. So, Shauna, do you know anything more about, you know the woman I'm talking about on Marion?
I do. I believe Frank Nichols went out.
He did.
Spoke with her and made some recommendations, and probably spoke with the neighbor.
But he really there's nothing on the books that would give him, like, if he felt that there is certain mitigation that should have taken place, he really there's no teeth, right, in any of our ordinances.
There is a fine.
Yeah,
I did hold a certificate of occupancy recently because they did not build up to spec.
Yeah, but I'm not sure that in this case that the person didn't do something that they were required to do as part of the building permit. I think it's something that maybe nobody anticipated. Like in this section of West Newton, and I'm sure it's similar to where David's talking about, there's all these underground streams that have, that have been around for years, and nothing happens until somebody does something to block the flow or whatever. So you don't find out about it until after the fact. But anyway, I'm not gonna keep going on about it, but I do think that David raises a very legitimate issue. And if you're the person that's on the other end of it, and all of a sudden you have a new water problem, it's pretty frustrating. And I think that we should try and see if there's some way of dealing with this. I know we're not gonna tonight, but
Yeah.
it warrants a discussion.
So we have some hands raised in the room as well. So Counselor Getz, I think you're next.
Yeah, no, I fully support bringing everybody to the table, law, engineering. So that this issue, just even in terms of, because water's like air, there's no lot line.
I'm
in the
not
sense of-
sure that our engineering department has the expertise to come up with solutions for a groundwater issue. I'm just
Okay.
gonna point that out.
Okay.
Groundwater is a whole different animal than stormwater.
Yeah, but I sort of feel like we need to address.
I understand.
And regulate it, in the
I'm
sense
not
of like.
sure that doesn't belong in zoning ordinance. It is a bigger discussion.
Okay, all right, but I do think that it's complex and there's specific areas of the city that have such high water tables, that it's
Yes.
actually, whoa, wait a minute here, we need to have a second plan in place, right?
Counselor Leary.
Yeah, I'm very sympathetic to Councilor Kalis's point. I know particularly in Oak Hill Park, it's been a big issue. I would like to have a fuller discussion on it. I mean, there may just be areas of this city that we can't allow basements, for example. And I almost wonder, I know Oak Hill Park was built as GI housing originally in the 40s. And I figure cost was one of the reasons why there were no basements, but perhaps it wasn't that. It was because they knew the water table was very high there and there really shouldn't be basements there. But it would make sense to really have a full, maybe have a consultant or something to really look at our groundwater areas. And so that we can get more expertise, or maybe this is what we need to have on staff.
So we do know the stormwater ordinance does require that they test for the groundwater level.
Right, and I know it's supposed to be 1 foot, but I mean,
Yes.
we seem to be getting a lot of surprises here. Because I'm talking about finding out more about the unknown, as Councilor Gentile was just talking about. Because it's getting more and more of a problem, especially, we're building large houses with big basements. Maybe that's probably a problem, getting to be more of a problem, and we're getting much heavier precipitation as well.
Obviously, you displace the groundwater when you
Yeah.
put in a structure.
When you get in a bathtub, the water goes up. Councilor Rado, Ben Ginsburg, who is a resident of Oak Hill, wanted to speak about his problem. Can I call on him first?
Of course, of course.
Go ahead, Ben.
Hello, thank you all for listening to me. I'm sorry for speaking during the normally reserved part. Yeah, so I did all of the steps that were advised. First of all, so the property behind me was bought by a developer, torn down, they regraded, they raised it, above the 4 feet, which is now an ordinance in place. So I'm grateful for your work on that, about the retaining walls. They regraded it. My neighbors and I almost immediately saw an increase in flooding in our backyards. And now during heavy rainstorms, our backyards are unusable for about 3 days afterwards. They become about a foot deep in water. Previously, we would maybe get an inch during really heavy rainstorms, but now it's every storm, every snowfall. It just becomes slushy, and we basically, our backyards, our property values have been lowered because of this. And I went to all of my city councilors. I went to 4 city councilors who don't represent my ward. Thankfully, Councilors Kalis, Farrell, and Lipoff were all super helpful and tried to organize a meeting with ISD and engineering, who all told me we were just out of luck, and that there was no mitigation to be done, and there was no fine, and the $25,000 that I had to spend, and the more than that my next door neighbor had to spend to gut our basements after flooding, are just, I guess, on us, not the developer, because the developer sold the house, and we don't really know where to go from here, but we're incredibly frustrated. And this happened over a year ago. And the city essentially just left us in the lurch. And I try to be a good citizen, but you can tell why I'm frustrated.
Thank you, Ben. Councilor Rado?
So it's clear we have a couple things going on. One is stormwater. We have a stormwater ordinance. We have inspectors who are supposed to go out there and inspect to make sure that stormwater is staying on the property. So that, I think, assuming our inspectors are doing their job and our engineers are doing their jobs, is probably working. The groundwater clearly is not. So the question is, yes, Councilor Leary may be right in certain parts of the city. We don't want to have, we may have to say no basements. I personally think a better view is to put in the ordinance some requirement that you not displace groundwater. And I'm not sure the right language to use or the right measurements, or, you know, I don't want to impose a cost on every single person building a home if groundwater is not an issue there. That would be kind of silly. But we have large parts of the city, Ward 5, Ward 8, where there's a problem. So what I'm going to, and I think this would go to zoning and planning. So what I'm going to suggest, Councilor Kalis, if you want to take the lead, is docket an item to go to ZAP, asking for a draft ordinance to require some kind of groundwater testing and approval as part of the construction process. And you can put limits on it. I don't think, you know, someone's putting on a kitchen in their house. I don't think we want to make them start going through tons of hoops. But if we have someone who's demolishing a building and building a much bigger building, and then, like, you know, poor Ben over here gets stuck with a huge bill, that's just not right. And I think preventable. I mean, we could, if they were disturbing the groundwater to such a degree, they were gonna harm a neighbor's property, they don't get a building permit. So that would be my sense, and I don't think it stays here. I think it goes to ZAP, unless somebody else disagrees with that.
Oh, I think that's where it does go. But I would love to have maybe two docket items. One would be to ask planning to do some research on this, because we can't be the only community that's got this problem. And others may have already solved it, and it would be great to have someone help us know that in advance. And then
Well, I think, Chair Albright, it seems to me that this would go to ZAP, and the request is for an ordinance. I expect planning to go to other communities and see what they've done.
I'll include research as well in that wording.
Good.
I would suggest it be docketed with public facilities and ZAP. I mean, public
fine with
facilities
that.
deals with stormwater, but I can see why you would suggest zoning and planning. Can we do both?
I'm fine with that. I see no reason we can't.
Yeah, it's been, we have one item that's docketed to zoning and planning and public facilities. And it was docketed, I think, in September, and we're having trouble finding a mutual time for us to meet.
That's the only issue.
But we could do it on a night that ZAP meets and finance, for whatever reason, doesn't meet. I mean, finance meets, Councilor Gentile, I'm sure there's nights you could arrange to avoid a finance meeting on a Monday night, so we could do this on a Monday.
We've done that the last two Monday meetings.
Then you can go for 3. But I think you're right. We should be there. So my suggestion, Councilor Kalis, we'll put a docket item together. I'm happy to sign on to it.
Yeah.
All right, I'll do that.
I'm all set. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for raising this, Councilor Kalis.
Thank you. Okay, Councilor Kelly?
Thank you. I agree with the recommendations that Councilor Laredo and Councilor Gentile just made. I would like to see a docket item go to both committees at a convenient time, which we can try and do around them. I have a question, I guess, partly for David Kalis and partly for Ben. When you talk about the effects of neighboring properties, are you only talking about surface flooding, yard flooding, or are you talking about basement flooding, or both? Ben, which were you talking about specifically as an example? Are you still here, Ben?
I am, sorry, I couldn't unmute. It's
And you're
both.
invisible.
Sorry. You can hear me though, right?
Yeah.
It's both, right? Because it's the regrading of the property behind me has caused just massive puddling along the fence line, which stops at the property line because they've like regraded it almost 3-4 feet from their house down. Whereas previously it was flat. And then also the groundwater in Oak Hill Park, as we all know, is so high that my sump pump just consistently runs for days after a storm, basically, trying to keep the groundwater away. That was not previously like that. It started almost immediately after they expanded the basement. The previous house was 2,500 square feet. The new house is 8,800 square feet.
Wow.
And can I ask you one question? Do you know if that development was captured under the new stormwater ordinance or was it previous?
It was this started happening in December of 2023.
No, but did they pull the building? You wouldn't know maybe if they pulled the building permit before the stormwater ordinance was in place.
I'm sorry, that I do not know.
Do you have the address of that development?
34 SD Farm Road.
He happens to have the exact address.
Well, it's behind my house.
I know. No, it's great. The reason I'm raising this is because the distinction was made by Shauna, which is really appropriate, that there are two different kinds of water issues here, the stormwater and the groundwater. And we all have already identified a couple of well-known areas, Oak Hill Park, over by Countryside. Here in West Newton, it's not such an issue, though we do have some areas that are low and flood more often. But those are usually rainstorm flooding things. So I think it's a really appropriate thing to raise. I appreciate you bringing this forward, Councilor Kalis, and I would be happy to sign on with it too. We've seen, we've heard complaints of a lot of people who have had increased basement flooding as a result of construction nearby, which is why I am raising the distinction too. And if DPW is in charge of stormwater, we do need to be looking at the groundwater aspects of it, and in which case engineering and or maybe someone outside needs to be involved. I think it is a ZAP issue because I think we might need to create a new ordinance, as President Laredo mentioned some ideas around that, and I am fully behind all this too. And I look forward to having it be continued elsewhere. Thanks.
Anybody else?
You're gonna need conservation as well, just so you're all aware.
Yes, conservation as well, yeah.
So I'm gonna move, I think no action necessary in this one, and I'll redock it, and I'm assuming I could use everybody's names to co-dock it with me?
Yes.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, so Councilor Kalis is, and are we moving, okay, no action necessary on 347-24. What about the first one, which was about stormwater, 324-24? Are we done with that one? Does anybody have any reasons to keep that one going?
No action necessary.
No action necessary on both, yes?
And they're gonna come back basically combined with, maybe.
What- Yeah. Okay, so we have a proposal to, motion to move no action necessary on 324-24 and 347-24, and they will come back in a different form. Okay.
Thank you.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no, abstentions? Okay, we're done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Wasn't very helpful, but thank
I
you.
know you got us into the right direction.
Yeah, it's interesting that we just don't have a groundwater ordinance, so.
Gonna take some investigation to
Yes.
see what we can actually
Yes.
do.
Okay. So I guess that's our last docket item. I think we are done for the night. So we are adjourned.
Well, we have to adjourn, right?
Yes, we
Okay.
adjourned.
Okay.
Okay.
Before we adjourn, could I just ask one question of David, if you know the answer? David, when the Oak Hill houses were developed, they were on slabs, is that not correct?
That's
And
correct.
Were there any that had basements, or was the entire location done on slab?
Look, I wasn't around, so I don't know exactly. I've heard they're all slab,
Oh,
and
slab.
now they're not.
Yeah, yep. Okay, I can see where we've created a problem here by allowing basements to be built, possibly.
I mean, there are places in beach areas where they require houses to be built on stilts for this very
Yeah.
reason.
Situate, anything along.
So,
the beach,
yeah.
no, needs to be raised.
Okay, so is that it? We're adjourned? Okay, have a good night, everybody.
Night all.
So,